Have you ever had some sort of business idea? Maybe you thought of a solution to an everyday problem, and for a second you think, I could make this thing a product, or I can sell this, but then you just brush it off, you know? And this is a very big problem because to my aspiring entrepreneurs out there, you're throwing away possible $1 million business ideas and wasting your amazing creativity. This was a massive problem for me because I think of something and then I just like brush it off. I just forget about it without storing it or even acting on it in any way. But after reading up on the legendary entrepreneurs that started these massive companies from the same simple ideas, I just thought, like, what if? So, now what? Now what I realized from all that was that, number one, I needed to reduce the friction between having that idea and then storing it somewhere. So what I usually now use is I use the recorder on my phone. So the second I get the idea, at a house monitors, I just record it and I say as much of it as possible. So I'm trying to get all the idea from my head into a more permanent space. The second thing I realized was that I was kind of intimidated by the thought of building something big. Not that I wasn't excited, but I was like, it's a huge project. I was confused. I was intimidated by the complexity of the project itself until I came across the book. Until I came across the book, The Lean Startup. Now, it simplified the process of building a great product into a bunch of very simple steps. Number one, imagine I have this product idea on making an app that takes passengers, that connects passengers and drivers and takes the passengers where they want to go. I don't think there's any app like that. So I'd have some assumptions. The first step is you need to identify the assumptions with your business idea. So the assumptions that need to be correct for the business you have in mind to succeed. So for that app that connects drivers and passengers, some assumptions would be: number one, passengers find I would assume that passengers find having to wait for a taxi to be inconvenient enough for them to want to use my app as a solution. That's an assumption, because if this isn't correct, there's no point in this startup. The second assumption is that they find, like, if I'm planning on building a paid app, the second assumption would be that they find waiting for a taxi so horribly inconvenient that they would actually pay for the app to serve them. So it's all about thinking continuously about your idea, and then deconstructing the assumptions, breaking down the assumptions you have around the idea. Another thing I want to point out is that the assumptions don't have to be always positive. There are some pessimistic assumptions. For example, like, these assumptions are what limit your business. So for example, negative side would come out and say, okay, you would assume that drivers would prefer to operate independently and not collaborate on my app or on my platform. So this negative assumption restricts your business idea, so it's important that you test that assumption. And how do you test it? Number one, you build something called a minimum viable product. You test your assumption by building a minimum viable product, and you show that minimum viable product to the customers. Now, the minimum viable product is basically, you have this grand idea of what your product should be in real time. You have to shrink it down to just testing that one assumption. So you make the smallest possible version of your product to test that one assumption, and then you measure the results. So you've built, then you measure the results, and then you learn, because once you measure those results, you'll determine whether your assumptions were right or wrong, and then you'll be able to you gain new insights. So once you've done that, then you build a new feature to test another assumption, and then you learn, then you measure, and then you learn. And that's the build, measure, learn feedback loop. So, and this inner outline made the thought of product development and creating a company or creating some sort of business from idea a lot less intimidating. Share this with your aspiring entrepreneur buddies so that they can bring their ideas to life. Peace out.